Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Beaufort, Town of Port Royal joint meeting. These meetings have been going on, we were discussing this a few minutes ago, for as long as anybody in the room can remember, on and off. So it's over 20 years these have been happening. Obviously, we haven't had one since COVID. We had one while I was mayor, and that was it, but we haven't had any others since that. And we're glad to have and to welcome the City of Beaufort to the Town of Port Royal to have these joint meetings. We all believe that these are extremely beneficial. And, you know, the two cities, the town, work very well together. We'd love the opportunity to sit and talk. Stephen, you got anything you would like to add?
Just excited about tonight and bringing the councils together. We've got some new faces on our council since the last time we met. Appreciate y'all hosting, appreciate the delicious food, and so thanks to Brooke and Van and staff for setting up the spread. Look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much. We did, before the meeting, we did send out and exchange some emails. The town staffs did back and forth about topics. So we do have a list of topics in front of us that we're going to discuss tonight. And this is an open kind of discussion in that way, and it's really to, you know, the list is just to spar a conversation about the different things. So the first item on the list is the revisioning of Ribault Road. And for the Port Royal citizens who follow what's happening in our community, they know that this is something we're working on. And they've heard my statement of calling it, you know, the bridge to Burger King is an area that we're focusing on very much right now. But the reality is both the city and the town are really looking at Ribault Road from bridge to boundary. We have our project that's bridge to Burger King, and then there's the project that you have that's going on the other way, and there's the county project that overlays over both of these, which is bridge to Boundary Street, and what is that going to look like in the future, and what is the impact of traffic and what needs to be done, and there's going to be more over the next couple of months we're going to hear about that. To let the city understand where the town is right now, we actually had 3 days worth of meetings this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We were very much involved with looking at the properties and what could be done with redevelopment, vacant land, and there was a presentation that was done to us I would say by April, the latest, Van, you would say we'll have a full presentation that's done. I found it rather informative. It was great to have the team. We have a 7-member team that's in here, 3 from the town of Port Royal, 3 from 303 Associates, and Councilman Howard from the county was our 7th member. And we had a group of 4 from the firm of
Arnett Muldrow.
Arnett Muldrow. I couldn't remember their name. I was thinking Tripp, and I know that's not the name of the firm. That really took a deep dive into some properties, and we were able to come back and talk about that. So, you know, our goal, so that the city understands what we're trying to do, and I'll let the rest of the council chime in, is we believe that the redevelopment along Ribault Road is due. We know that. There are a lot of very good properties. There's different reasons why it hasn't happened. And one of the things that we really want to work on hard is dealing with the fact that it's a thoroughfare to Ladies Island, and how do we calm that traffic. We still understand it has to come through, but we looked at a number of lights being added, and I'm not going to say what the number is until we figure it all out, but even with the number that was thrown out yesterday or Wednesday at the meeting, it only added 4 minutes to the drive if you got stopped at a few of those lights. And that's some of the things we've got to make sure that the citizens understand, that just travel through, because they're the ones that are going to feel like we're doing something in that way. But I think it was very enlightening when you get those traffic engineers to really say, what does a light do, and what does it do time-wise? I know that that's one of the things that I took away from that, was like, that's a message that we have to remember to keep talking about in that way. And then obviously we both have the same goal of that visual narrowing of a road. I mean, you've done it, you're doing it well in the city. We're starting to do it here, but to bring that to Ribault Road as well, so that when people come off of the bridge, the Russell Bell Bridge, they realize they're arriving somewhere. And this is a place. It's not just a road to go somewhere, but this is a place. And that's that kind of message and goal we'd like to get out in that way. Council want to add anything to the Ribault Road, what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we've done to be ready for this?
I think one of the main issues is what we're trying to do is to calm that traffic. So it's like Joe said, or the mayor said, I'll never remember the English all. one of the things that we talked about yesterday and we've talked about all along is the calming effect coming down. When you come off that bridge at 90 to nothing and you never slow up, so you don't even know what Port Royal has to offer. So we want to redevelop all that so that people will go, oh my gosh, let me stop. Let me see what's going on. And maybe even do a pedestrian, walk down there. If the traffic is calm enough, we can do it. Taking some of the traffic off of, putting in stoplights to take some of the traffic off of Paris Avenue. Paris Avenue is built, we have a lot of truck traffic coming through there. It's just like on the main thoroughfare. All the truck traffic comes to Port Royal. It's been rerouted because of the bridge downtown. Well, those trucks are flying through here, and if you had a child walked out, it's awful dangerous. But I think it's going to, number one, I think it's going to beautify the road coming in here. It's going to slow that traffic down, and it's going to get things that we need in Port Royal. So as we're a walking community and golf cart, people can jump in their golf cart and run up to get what they need, or, I think it's going to be a big asset to the town.
And also one thing is the crossing of the Spanish Moss Trail, as it begins here in Port Royal and it goes out, and how we cross it across the road out there. That's huge, and how everything works with the development and through here, the spur road, et cetera, where it comes off, and just the vision we have to have as we move forward and what's going on out there now and what we'd like to see out there.
My mic on, yeah. Hey. So no, I'll say, I was talking with Joe the other day and how he stated that Rebo Road, what is it, 30,000 cars a day?
30,000 trips a day.
30,000 trips a
travel
day.
through our section of Reebok Road.
31,000 a day. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm excited we've got a great firm working on the study, and I think, that'll shed a lot of light and really kind of show some options. So I'm looking forward to that report. So.
And so Stephen, and Council, what is your vision of Burger King to Boundary? Because, you hear what we're trying to do this way. What's your vision the other way? Because I guess we both have to communicate this to the county who's looking at the big traffic light.
Right. Yeah, so we've had very brief discussions about it. I think it has been identified on our capital improvement plan as something we're going to start looking into. For us, since we finished the Boundary Street redevelopment project approximately 2.5 years ago, our priority has been stormwater. Mossy Oaks, we have 9 troubled areas. We've got engineering going on Calhoun Street. We're going to start construction hopefully this year. Engineering is going on in the Point neighborhood, and that's looking like it's going to be a bigger bear than what we thought it was when you consider the entire watershed that goes into parts of the Old Commons and Carteret Street and the entire Point neighborhood, and then throw a 300-year-old city and all the mess, and that better than anybody what's under the roads. So we are prioritizing the parallel road that was not completed when Boundary Street was completed because we didn't have the funding. So I think we have some higher priorities in terms of capital improvements, but I do think we are very supportive of the Rebuilt Road redevelopment. And I think for us, the priority would be y'all's section first, and then our section sometime after that. And I liken what you guys are doing, similar to our Boundary Street redevelopment 12, 14 years ago. Mike knows the timing better than I do. Very similar. We're pushing 38,000 to 40,000 cars a day down Boundary Street, down that corridor. With that suicide lane, we were seeing a significant number of accidents. They typically weren't fatal, but they were an inconvenience, danger to life and property. And so I think the catalyst for us on Boundary Street redevelopment was a safety concern. A year after we finished the Boundary Street project, we checked in with public safety. We actually saw an over 20% decrease in accidents along the corridor. So I think that alone is justification enough for making those improvements. But we had 2 other goals. One was the function, because we are pushing almost 40,000 cars down the corridor. Now you're pushing 31,000 cars. As we continue to see volume of traffic, it's going to be, dysfunctional. And so the more that we can provide, we got 40-mile-an-hour speed limits through Boundary Street, so I don't think folks are taking much more time than what it did before the improvements. And then the third was aesthetics. We didn't feel like the gateway to our city was reflective of the core of our city. You get to Bellamy's Curve, you make the corner, you're like, wow, look at this place. Before you get there, you were kind of like, hey, what's going on here? 1960s, 1970s sort of auto sprawl. And now we're seeing a significant amount of private investment on the back of that public sector investment with the new Publix, the new Spring Hill Suites,
I don't know what the number is, but if I had to just pull a number out of thin air, I'd say we're probably looking at $50 to $60 million worth of capital investment since we've completed the project, and we're just getting started. So I think, for what it's worth, I think you guys are on the right path, and we are supportive. If there's a way for us to work together so that the improvement looks like it was done consistently, right?
Yep.
So in terms of like crossings and what the street signs look like and what the more contiguous it can look, I think the better we all are. And so I'll sort of leave it to my council and staff to talk about where it comes in the priority and how we might interface through the process. But at the end of it, we are supportive and like to make it a priority as we start talking about some of these funding things.
Just hearing you say that, when we originally started these meetings, that was the whole purpose. So when you came out of Fort Royal, went into Beaufort, or Beaufort came into Fort Royal, you didn't realize you were in two separate towns. So we wanted to kind of do everything alike coming in here.
Well, I often joke that most of our citizens don't see these invisible lines. I mean, I was born on Drayton Drive. I lived on Elizabeth Lane. Citizens don't really know when you're in Port Royal or in Beaufort. And I know we're trying to establish our own identities, and I think that's cool. But the more we can blur the lines between the neighborhoods, especially with transportation infrastructure and making sure that it's as efficient and as safe as possible, I think is important.
I agree.
I mean, historically, the Boundary Street Master Plan, starting back in 2006, and had it not been for the Tiger Grant, whether or not it would have gotten funded to the point that we see its completion where we are today, but it created a new emphasis for the gateway coming into the city, and that's exactly what y'all need coming off the bridge. Right. And I think the opportunities from the traffic design standpoint, we had long conversations and discussions about what was going to create the calming effect of that road. And once we reduced the suicide lane from it and kept the cars from screaming down the sides to make left-hand and right-hand turns, and into each other. And that was those conversations really led us to what Dover Cole and what the ultimate plan was when we did the road, and it has worked. I mean, it is definitely a success, and the catalyst to the private investment is exactly what would benefit on this side as well, because that will spur build it and they will come kind of thing, and that certainly has worked on our side as well. So
I also think the timing for federal and state monies is coming close, and so there's a sense of urgency in my mind for these large capital infrastructure projects at both the federal level and what I'm told the state is preparing their own sort of fund. And so if we've got some matching funds, the more we can have these projects shovel ready, whatever that means.
I mean, the infrastructure bill is a prime example. I mean, they're focusing on transportation, so we've got to be prepared and ready to go, hopefully for something similar, a Tiger Grant or some aspect of that.
Because the reality is neither of us have the cash
Correct.
or the borrowing ability to accomplish these projects by ourselves.
Right.
From a timing point of view, we're looking at the medical, I'll call it the hospital's growth pattern, what's happening on Repo there. Go up the street a little bit further, the college, and how that's expanding, how that's going to affect Carteret Street. So the timing of what you're doing and then us tying together, plus the growth plans of TCL, the hospital, as well as cybersecurity of what we have going. So all those things in the next few years should be clearing up as to what we want to do in their plan. So tying together because if we did it today, what we need and looked at versus what's going to be, what we think is going to change in the next couple of years, that's going to have some major effects.
I also think we could use some help.
Go.
We've been working with our partners at the county and a number of stakeholder groups on Ladies Island. But another priority for us has been Ladies Island and trying to work with the partners of the county. I want to be polite about this. We only control about 30% of the Sea Island corridor at this time. 70% is in the county's hands. The rest of the island and the Sea Islands are in the county's hands. The Ladies Island plan called for a Ladies Island Village master plan to try to reorganize transportation, commercial and retail and residential development to make more of a downtown Ladies Island as a part of that corridor, to create more daily services so residents don't have to leave the Sea Islands to come across bridges, and to also reduce densities in certain parts of the Ladies Island. So any, just from an advocacy standpoint, any assistance that Port Royal can lend to help with our partners to make those things a greater priority would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think we are supportive of that. Obviously, reducing trips through our town is something we're supportive of, but we all do understand that they're still coming off, and they're coming off on our bridge and making a hard left turn, and that intersection keeps, and hard right turn in the afternoon, that intersection keeps being ignored a little bit. It's always on everybody's radar, but it never steps up to the funding scenario, and I think really that is a lot of the county's responsibility in that way, that intersection.
Or DOT for that matter.
Or DOT, but we're very concerned about what that ends up looking like, because according to who takes the lead, it ends up being how fast can I move cars through that intersection safely? And that does not fit with the vision and the goal of what Port Royal wants, or with the fact that we, the community, spent the effort to make sure that there was a walking path on that bridge. You're going to cut off access on this side if you go with a right turn lane with no obstruction. How does somebody access from the Mossy Oaks Village, from the town of Port Royal, and from our other side of there, to get to that path? How do we make that 9-mile loop, which has been discussed over and over, which is Spanish Moss Trail, down Bay Street, down Meridian Road, back over the bridge, down Waddell, back to the trail? How do you make that a reality if you just say we got to move cars around that turn faster because they back up? So that's where we need to work together, because the more we can make the availability for citizens to spend time outdoors and do what they love to do, because everything we've built in this community for outdoor use gets used and gets used to its fullest extent. And we need to remember we need to keep doing that in that way. And I think your statement about that interfacing down Rebar Road, I think a big part of that is definitely with the county plan. That, in that design, we got to decide how do those, that's where we need to say, this is the right street light design, this is the right traffic light, this is the right street names, that the way they're going to be posted and shown, so that that consistency goes down there in that aspect. So I think it's good. Anybody else? Van, Brooke, anything to add?
I have a question. Is there kind of a vision of what this is going to look like? I sit here and I'm trying to think of this in my mind, moving traffic through but making it aesthetically pleasing. I thought about a flyover, but you probably wouldn't want a flyover there because it's not very welcoming. I'm struggling with that vision. Maybe the transportation engineers have it all figured out, right?
They don't. And the reality, I think the reality, what was that, Kevin? You want to say? Wait, we're going to see something. But we've got a traffic study, the tool study. We're more than willing to share it with you. It was before you, I think, that you could take a look at what some of those intersection improvements might look like. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, to do the vision that we're looking for and to make it safe. We had another terrible accident there yesterday, I believe. It was 2 days ago. A terrible accident there 2 days ago. I mean, it's monthly, weekly, they happen at that intersection. It's going to require people to slow down. They're going to have to stop. It may take 4 minutes longer to get from the bridge to the bridge, in this situation, to that right turn. But it will make everybody safer. You'll get home at night. You'll get to work in the mornings. You'll get to see your family and your kids. And in that way, we hope you're going to see some nice businesses that you might want to stop and utilize in that way. That's the goal. I mean, honestly.
On a personal experience, trying to cross that bridge, people are really going fast, me included. and somehow it probably starts a little further back on the bridge, or slowing traffic down, because you come off the bridge and then there you are, right there. And then
the Russell Bell Bridge into Port Royal.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
We all know the difficulty with getting the highway department to lower speed on any of these roads. It's almost an impossibility to do. I remember I was part of the 2006 Boundary Master Plan. Different life, different things, sat in many of those design meetings, and from day one the goal was 35 miles an hour. It was always 35 miles an hour. It was supposed to have sharrows in the road, to share the road with bike lanes, all that stuff. There was no way. The DOT to the end, they fought and fought and fought. You got what you got. And it's aggravating that's where we are. I think things are changing there. I think we're seeing that as well with some of the directives that come out of Christy Hall and the director of at DOT, the secretary, excuse me. I think we have more of a chance to get some things done, and we're hoping to break that rule a little bit in our
The
section.
Complete Streets is changing a lot of that.
Yes.
And that has definitely been adopted by DOT.
Correct.
From the standpoint. So
that's what we're going to
that's a
do with this
huge-
section.
That's a huge benefit that you have, just being the years later in doing the plan than we
Just
had.
a couple
with
of years
Boundary
later
Street
made a
Master.
difference in
Yeah.
that aspect. So we don't know, and we'd love to see them slow down. I had talked about, and I still have this vision in my mind, what I call the inner circle of northern Beaufort County. So that's you, us, the county. I mean, really, when you get past, when you get to the air station, all the way through the islands, should there really be any speed limit that's over 40 miles an hour to the Broad River Bridge? You think about all those main roads, you think about what's going on. Should those ones that are 55 now be 40, and the ones that are 40 and 45 be 35? I mean, really, it's going to add time. There's no question. And hopefully we'll have more businesses for more jobs so people don't have to travel further. That's ultimately the goal. But I think that inner circle is just way too fast. I mean, just think about driving out of town, leaving your area. You get to 60 miles an hour before you realize it. And should that even be 60 out that way? And the same thing on Ladies Island and St. Helena. So Complete Streets is going to help change that. Let's focus back in here.
What's your timing on your current process, and what's the deliverable at the end of your process, and then sort of next step of taking it from that conceptual to putting a shovel in the ground?
Yeah, Van, I'll let you talk about the deliverables and the timing on this Carter study.
Well, the Carter study will be completed in April, based upon the 3 days of information as well as some follow-up questions that we are supposed to provide to them, and based upon the discussions we had yesterday. The tool study was a complement to what the corridor study was. This has been kind of sitting on the shelf for a while now, based upon obviously a lack of funding. But in anticipation of, what we call it the Beaufort Billion, or whatever you want to call it, we thought it would be appropriate to have what we would like to see in place to help us in our participation in those discussions. Because like you said earlier, the funding for something like that is significant and well beyond our capabilities at this point. And we are obviously talking about the roads that we're talking about are owned by the SCDOT. So we're going to have to work with them as well.
Pivot a bit. I'm appreciative of County Council. This week they passed a resolution standing up a capital transportation committee to explore for November of 2022. Right, Alice? And I'm appreciative they include municipal representation. So I think you guys have been notified that each of the 11 county council members will get an appointment, and then each of the municipalities.
Welcome, Bill.
Get to come sit next to me, so I can pick off his
So
plate.
you can pick off something to eat. You didn't bring any desserts.
You didn't get any cookies, man. This guy over here,
Welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Joe.
So they've asked for appointments from the municipalities by February 10th. I understand today on county council there may be a county council member or two who will appoint themselves to that committee. Do you have any thoughts on whether it will be a politician or a staff member or a citizen? What we haven't really discussed it other than just putting it on the table on Tuesday, so we're trying to get our heads around it.
Right, so this was one of the conversations I was hoping we would have tonight. We haven't discussed it as a group yet. I saw it, I communicated with a county council member, and my initial thought was, again, this is something I'd really like to be involved with and try to work on, but I've got to talk to my council and see if anybody else wants to do that as well. But then I started thinking, okay, then they're talking about a citizens, and we certainly don't want to be a single elected official on what's a citizens group. So I started pulling back from that. But if other elected officials are going to appoint themselves, then I would be looking back at one of us to be there as well. It either, in a lot of ways in my mind, it either has to be a full citizens, and you have to say that, but the county didn't say that, or it's almost has to be a full elected or a very strong citizen that is willing to sit on something like that. The timeline has me a little concerned about that committee. I think it's very, very compressed, and I want to make sure how useful that, especially when we go out into our communities for volunteers for stuff like this, are they going to be constructive and useful? Is the timeline right? But I think we have to get a good, solid representation for north of the Broad on there, and we have 2 municipalities from north of the Broad, so we get those 2 seats, and we have our four county seats, right, Alice? 4 for north.
Well, this is our old seats.
Oh, it's the old seats still. It'll be 5. It'll be 5, so it'll be 5 seats in that way.
Alice, I hate to put you on the spot, but you have any thoughts on the committee and how you see it being structured?
I am not going to ask to be on the
You don't think it should be elected?
For mine,
Okay.
for my one person.
Okay.
You know, keep in mind that the city of Beaufort has Brian and Paul and York, too, will all be able to pick someone for their district. And for Oil has Brian and myself, too. So, you know, I think it's wide open. I'm very open.
Right.
Okay.
Right, Brian and Alice, both those districts are both of ours.
Right.
So, if Alice and Brian are looking for suggestions, then I think we should talk about who do we suggest to them. So again, that we know that we're working together on that, and then we have our own as well. I don't want to suggest, if we've got somebody strong in the community that Alice is willing to do, then we get another person that we can drag for our own options on who we choose. And we've got to get a quick clarification on whether it's elected officials or citizens. And I think we need to figure that out. We need to hear from other county council members on that.
And Joe Passmore will have the last say, too. I have not talked to him about it, because he knows I have no desire to be appointing myself.
Kevin?
But I would suggest that both of you talk to him. I mean, he'll have the last say of county council members that might want to.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've talked about both elected officials, private citizens. I think, I kind of said to Joe, my only 2 requirements are really someone that kind of maybe familiar with the process, and then also someone that's going to really, kind of fight for the area and fight for who they're there representing, because we make these lists, and I still haven't heard or gotten any answer if there will be a priority to the list as far as it just, a list. So, that kind of does change it if other council members are already putting themselves on as their representative. So, but yeah, we've discussed both, so.
Yeah, I mean, like Joe, I have a strong interest, but I do not have the bandwidth to participate on the committee, so I'm not going to appoint myself. And I'm not going to unilaterally appoint anybody. I'm just going to be the majority vote
Right, that's gonna be the
of
discussion.
council to make the appointment, even though it seems like the county gave the mayors the purview. So I'm not sure. I guess we can talk about it in our own work session.
Yeah, I
Coming up.
tend to shy away from it being elected. I mean, I know my own abilities and otherwise, I mean, I'm not sure I would be the person to be on that committee anyway, but I think we can find within our citizens the coverage that would really provide. I mean, and we've had success with, the previous capital improvements. I mean, I think the opportunity is there, so.
Maybe the mayors need to reach out to Joe and say it needs to be a citizens committee. We need an answer quickly of whether it's not. Because I think if it ends up not being, and there are mixed elected officials, I think that changes a little bit of what we might do and what you might do as far as who we put on those. And we have very little time to make that happen. We have 1 meeting to do that. We have our one February meeting
Technically,
to
we
do
don't
it.
have a meeting, do we?
We have one.
Do we have one
We
before?
have one before the 10th.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
it's very, there's not a lot of time for us to discuss this. Didn't know it was coming down the pike, so wasn't ready.
Do we know when the county's going to make their appointments? That would be probably very revealing.
February 11th.
So the 11th.
So you get an extra
We have to
day.
do ours first, so that's interesting timing. Okay, I won't read into that, but yes, I will.
I mean, I do agree with Kevin. I think it's incumbent that we have somebody who has knowledge about the capital transportation needs of the region, understands where we've been, where we're trying to go, and that will also be participatory and be a loud advocate. And frankly, I've been racking my brain since Monday, since we found out that it was an option for us. And I sent it out to the guys about let's come up with some names. My list is non-existent at this point, but we'll.
I have a question. It's from Ms. Howard, Councilwoman Howard. Is this timeline being driven by something else? Is it hard, or is it something that can be adjusted given the short?
It's being driven to get the list made before, so it's made public, so we can get it on the ballot.
Right, I mean, ultimately, it's the ballot.
It's all being driven by the
You work back from that ballot and how you advertise it and how you promote it.
Yes.
When I saw it, I was like, what? Then I did the numbers backwards and I said it makes sense, but I wish it would have started last November. You know, I wish we would have had this committee in place by January 1, but we didn't. We'll figure it out and we'll make it work like we always seem to do. The next item was really, I think this came from you, the access management plan, Highway 170. Was that something that was put on? Van, where did that one come from?
Not for me.
Do we remember?
That's one that the county that's been working on between the three of us again.
Okay.
It's more long-term than the Rebo Road one.
Right, right. And there already was one access management plan that the city had, no, we all had with the county on access to 170.
That's where it came from, because it was about 10 or 12 years ago.
Right, so they're just looking to update that as
Correct.
far as you know.
That's
So,
what it is.
man, we probably need to get into the mix there and see whether that's Jared working that as well. Any thoughts on how the existing, because you've had the development within the access management. The only place that's really, for us, was Shadow Moss, and they've only had that single access, so there was nothing that happened, any commercial development in the corridor.
Right.
Yeah, I think for us, and that quarter's been kind of quiet until recently, and now it's like all of a sudden, especially multifamily apartments around the Cross Creek Shopping Center have sort of exploded. And so I think that's caused a little concern, you know, while we start packing in high-density multifamily, is the transportation infrastructure surrounding prepared for those types of investments? You know, I'm supportive of the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit from Robert Smalls to the bridge today, but if we start loading it full of schools and residential and other, you know, significant impacts, you know, the conversation's going to have to change. So I think the time is to try to get ahead of it now instead of waiting till we're in a position like a Rebo or a Boundary Street where we're kind of playing catch-up. But I'm not sure where we are with the county.
Yeah, so it sounds like we all got to get,
It is county engineering that is undertaking
engineering,
the
so Jared's
effort
group?
to get the discussion going.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. You know, and I understand the statement about supporting the 55, but, you know, at the same token, Robert Smalls to the bridge, you're getting right into our zone. And
Oh, yeah. Like I
and that's
said.
what the 55 is not promotive of businesses and things coming and wanting to spend and invest in those properties. That's one of the reasons I'm not. Also, the worst intersection is Savannah Highway, Highway 170. And more deaths, more accidents will happen at that intersection than anywhere else. You're coming off the bridge at 60. Yeah, it's supposed to go down to 55 halfway down that ramp. It doesn't happen. And you're coming down Rebo Road at 55, which we all know they're doing 65. So you're meeting at that intersection at over 50 miles an hour, and if somebody decides to go do that. Chief, you have anything you want to add to that accident? Did I express what's happening there?
Yeah, you did a great
Okay.
job.
You know, so I understand that, and I think, but that is looking at the accidents. Even DOT has recognized it as the worst intersection in northern Beaufort County. So,
Is there a safety team? Because, you know, Cross Creek, we didn't trigger the median improvements there. Their safety team, looking at accident data of their own accord, and sort of just showed up one day to make improvements. Kind of surprised all of us that they're putting the improvements in the U-turn, which was, you know, is good. I'm glad they came out and made the improvements, and we didn't have to pay for it. But if the intersection's that bad, is there something we could do to lobby DOT to
I do know, didn't we heard back a while ago that they do have a safety team looking at it. But, you know, like you said, it takes 5 years. And I'm not sure that our citizens can wait 5 years with the number of accidents that have occurred there. And, you know, again, what are they going to do? Is it another, because it was originally discussed as a flyover. I very much remember that whole, I've seen 3 intersection designs there. I was here and worked for the utility when it was the big traffic circle, if anybody's been here long enough to remember that. Mary Beth, you do. It used to be a very, very large traffic circle. And now we're bringing back traffic circles. It's interesting. Then it went to the left and right turn, and then the road was widened, and there was a lot of discussion about a flyover. They didn't do the flyover, and now I'm just worried a flyover is going to come back in some ways. And again, a flyover destroys what could be another node for commercial for us in Port Royal. But again, it ends up being just to move cars. And I don't want to take the brunt of that in that way.
Yeah, I mean, there, you can see their goals, maximizing the throughput capacity.
That doesn't always meet the goals of what we both want in that ways. Next item is impact fees. Now, we've been talking about this one for a little while, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the ball's really in the county's court. I think generally we have agreement on the impact fees that we're going to pass. You know, the caveat is we haven't seen the updated We haven't seen the updated fees.
They just called a meeting this week for,
Oh.
they put out 3 dates for Northern to get together with the county engineering. They just got the update, they haven't set the date yet. Then they're
Ben,
gonna
did you
meet
get,
with us out.
you got that same?
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
on
good.
transportation.
Just on transportation.
Just on transportation. Because we're really looking at 3. Transportation, park recs, and library, correct? Those are the 3 we're all looking at. Well, isn't there an EMS one?
There's a proposal for
There's
EMS.
a proposal for an EMS. I don't know if you've seen any details on that one.
We'd like the EMS conversation to be a broader conversation about public safety in northern Beaufort County.
Yes.
And is there a way to, more efficiently deliver service? And so I don't think, we're in favor of any kind of EMS impact fees until we at least can hit the timeout button and have that conversation with everybody.
I think I'm in favor of that as well. Council, you thought, yeah, right, I think we're all agreement with that aspect.
I understand that the first round of recalcs after the county and the municipalities put in their projects had over $9,000 per single-family residential house
And transportation.
on transportation alone,
Yep.
which I think for us is probably a non-starter. So I appreciate that we've gone back to do the recalculations. And I understand the county's working on the draft IGAs, and the administration fee has been sort of resolved and hammered out.
One of the easiest ways to revisit the the transportation impact fee was to actually put some realistic timing to the list.
Yes.
So if the list looked like it couldn't actually be done in the next 10 years or so, or the 5, and again, another 5-year horizon of an impact fee, then they went back to the table to make sure it was actually reasonable.
And we haven't seen a priority list of the list at all.
That was what the email is setting for a meeting that's upcoming.
Okay, good. Good. No, yeah, it was
Those are some of the projects.
$9,000, and I agree with you on that statement, but then I think that's the number that was already going on in Bluffton.
It is, but for schools.
For
For
schools.
schools.
For schools.
It was total, right, the dollar value is the same, different purposes of the use.
Right.
And I have that thought, did it actually affect anything in construction at that rate in Bluffton? And
When they calculated the road impact fee based upon this new project list, it was a marginal change to what's happening in South of the Broad. It was significantly higher
North
from
of the
North of the Broad. It went from less than $1,000 to the $9,000 figure.
And I don't want to speak for my council, but I am supportive of the 3 impact fees that are being proposed. And I think if we can come to a reasonable fee, we'll put it on the table and try to get the IGAs and at least have the debate about it and see where we land. But I think it's the responsible thing to do.
they're supportive of the concept of an impact fee.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of details yet that we can't seem to get answers
Right.
to. Okay. I would,
Yeah, I think we're close. Right. I think there are some fine points that need to be hammered out. I think the fees need to be modified. I'm excited about the meeting that I just learned about.
we're, right, so am I. I think we're supportive of all, but the same one we've talked about. The library one we have a lot of conversation about that one because we're still looking for some sort of a satellite library or something to be added to that says, it makes sense in that way.
And Mike knows this better than I do because I came in kind of late to the game. We were going to pass them, and about the same time, this is before I was on council, there was talk about closing the library downtown and moving it out to Burton somewhere. And so I think the council at the time sort of pushed back on why would we pass an impact fee to support libraries when you're disinvesting in our jurisdiction. They decided not to do that, and the library is healthy and happy right there, downtown. So we'd met again since I'd been on council, and I think we had agreed to put the impact fees in place, but then there were certain council members that wanted us to pay all of those fees in arrears, which didn't make much sense to us because it has to be sort of sequestered to the jurisdiction. So we were the only ones who sort of lost out on not collecting them and being able to invest them in our city. So I think that's been resolved, and
It's been resolved for several years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ray McBride, what made the recommendation, don't pass until the new update of all the impact fees come forward, which is
Okay.
now.
But, I'm married to the director of literacy, so if I don't support a library impact fee, I will have to be sleeping on someone's couch.
I mean, like I said, the concept we understand. We would just really like to see, last time there was nothing, now there is the mobile. library, and how can we solidify where it's going to be and when it's going to be in our community to say, we're asking the citizens to pay for it, and here's what you're getting. Because right now, you're sending them downtown or all the way on the island through the traffic to visit a library from our area, and we just, that's really the conversation that we keep having amongst ourselves, that we need some answers to. And we look forward to the meetings too, to ask more questions. We asked, and I think we've all been asking questions. I think the answers have been a little slower coming back. So we've talked a lot about traffic issues, which is kind of the next one on the list. I think the one area we've missed and haven't talked about, and I know Stephen, you and I have had some conversations about this, is how Port Royal, the Lenora, West Mine, Drayton neighborhood has become a shortcut for the Mossy Oaks neighborhood. And that's something that goes on. And I think there are some residential streets in there that are less than desirable in the way they developed over the years because they just did. And they were never looked at. And I think the intersection of Battery Creek Road, West Vaughn Drive, at the Spanish Moss Trail, which is in your jurisdiction, we're just on the other side of the Spanish Moss Trail, I think is one of those ones that it's amazing there isn't more accidents there because it doesn't meet a single safety requirement. It doesn't meet any design from any traffic person because you have a stop sign. If you're coming out of West Vine and want to go across Battery Creek, you have a stop sign. The car coming at you, nobody uses blinkers. You think they're going straight. You're going to go. They're going to make a left into you. If you're coming down Battery Creek Road and you're going to make a left on West Vine or a right to coming into our area, cars will pass you because it's 35 feet worth of asphalt because people go flying around the corner because they don't have to stop. I think it's unfair to those neighbors, and I know it's our citizens, your citizens, and that's one of those intersections I think we could look at together and maybe say, and jointly go to DOT and say, hey, listen, we want to do something here. It's bound to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt. And now with the Spanish Moss Trail, people leaving, Drayton, Lenora, the Port Royal section, people leaving the city section and our little area there of Ridenauer and Prince William and walking to the trail, it's very, very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, and a lot of people do it. Jerry, you travel that area as much as I do and see it, and you connect to the trail there as like I do as well. And I think that's one of those ones that, the regional stuff is being worked on. I think that's one where we can get together and get out of that regional and say, how can we help this neighborhood out, especially the two gentlemen on the corner there.
Yeah, like you and I've talked. I mean, I'm personally supportive of arranging that better. I mean, my first house when I grew up was on Drayton Drive. My great-grandmother built a house in Lenora. Fast forward 40 years, my in-laws live on Camellia. So I go through that route for a long time now. And historically, that has been the ingress and egress for Mossy Oaks. I mean, since the 60s and 70s when the neighborhood was built. But I do think the volume of traffic, I'm surprised to hear that you're pushing 31,000 cars a day down Remote Road. I mean, I believe it, but I'm surprised it's that large, and I think that absolutely justifies significant improvements.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. You need to go look at the 2020 ADT about Boundary Street. I don't think it's as high as you think it is anymore. I think less cars are doing it. You need the 2021 is out.
Yeah.
Go look at the 2021, and you got to section it after 170. Okay. It's not as high as you think anymore because I've looked at them to see. Just go back. I mean, new
I drive it every day. It doesn't seem like less.
I agree. I agree with you in that aspect. But
There are 19 that are peeling off to go over Ladies on Drive, and 11,000 are continue on down to the city down Remote.
Yeah. So yeah.
I was actually amazed. I had a late start yesterday because we counted the homeless last night, so I didn't go to work until 3 o'clock. And when I left home at 3 o'clock to go to Savannah Highway, I was amazed, astonished. The traffic was backed up beyond is that BP? Right there, going to go towards Savannah. Now, I'm accustomed to that in the morning because normally I'm going there around 10 minutes till 8, and traffic's backed up beyond that gas station. But to find that at
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yesterday, I was like, my goodness, there's
Nope.
no difference
Nope.
at 3 o'clock than it is at 8 o'clock in the morning.
With the, your spine road tying in to near the Spanish Moss Trail and then continuing parallel to the Spanish Moss Trail into Battery Creek Road, I think organizing that intersection makes a whole lot of sense. But I'd argue that, one, it's in Port Royal's jurisdiction, and two, if you guys are doing all of the planning now for Bridge to Burger King, would that not be a part of that planning effort? So those things are already sort of prioritized and moving through the system?
It is, and we've met with the county, we've talked about it with the county. Jared's aware of it, he agrees. It makes sense for the traffic pattern to do the other side of the Spine Road, Reboat Road to West Vine, and that section in there. It's just the reality of funding. Again, it's the reality of funding. I think everybody thinks it's a 5-year to 10-year project, not in the near, if you want to think of near being 5 years.
Well, where are you on your spine road improvements? What's your time horizon?
So that changed with the sale of the port. I think we were at a different point before the sale. So I don't know that we have a solid answer. We are looking for funding. We are actively working on funding because...
It's in the original impact fee capital
Correct.
list. However, because of a faulty appraisal, which stunted the sale for a decade, the sales price ended up being significantly less than what the basis of the TIF was. It was on this revised impact fee list. It's been on every other list since then, but for whatever reason, nobody considers it really important other than us. Obviously, it's an economic development generator, so it will be on whatever list we participate on.
Yeah.
From this.
It's going to be a big part of us to go with the impact.
It's got impact fee, TIF potentially. There's other.
Right, and the penny tails tax. We need it on. We need to know what's on one of those lists.
It was on the $120 million. It was on our list that was submitted, but we got $50,000. So.
Yep.
Well, in advance of the sales tax committee that's about to be activated, does it make sense for us to compare our CIPs? And I mean, if there are some joint priorities that we communicate to our respective appointees, I mean, is that a good way for us to at least be sort of racking and stacking, as my Marine friends say, on what our joint priorities are?
I think it does, too. I think it does.
In particular, there's an economy to doing some of those projects together.
Right.
Maybe leverage our buying power.
Not only economy, but also impacts on residents. I mean, the disruption for Boundary Street was pretty significant. I think I and council really believed in the safety, the function, and the aesthetic improvements of Boundary. We spent $32 million, spent a long time trying to put the project together, and I still hear critics that thought the project was unnecessary. And so, you're going to have some of those same folks probably who don't think Reboat Road needs to be re-envisioned.
You remember when y'all put the median side? I mean, Rob was still at DOT then, or the county engineering then. Oh yeah, it was real popular.
No, the other thing we've heard from Jared Freliks at the county and our project manager Neil Puglisi when talking about Point Neighborhood and Carteret Street, there is a giant pot of federal funds that we will have access to. But I think there's this belief that the projects have to be large enough in size to really catch the eye of the feds. If they're small, 6-figure projects, they're probably not going to get much attention. But when we get in the 7- and 9-figure projects, that's when I think we have a better likelihood of, getting the federal funds down, which I think we're going to need. But then that goes back to that: are they shovel ready and prepared to go? Because everybody around the country is going to be
everybody's drooling,
fighting for this pot of money, and a bunch of us are fat and happy with ARPA funds to be able to make the matches that we weren't able to do 2 years ago.
Yeah, to talk about the connector, I think is the easiest way to describe it. The Reboat to West Vine connector. We put things in place. The design for the crossing takes that into consideration for the Spanish Moss Trail so that the connector can be added later. We did the same thing with the mast arm design and stuff. So we put all that in place because the design across Reboat Road could have been totally different if you don't think about a road. One of the things that could have been totally different was, do we do it elevated? Do we go after trying to find $2.5 million to do a pedestrian bridge? But if you do a pedestrian bridge, you never can do a road almost either way. So we lose our connected spine road on this side. We lose the ability to do a connector on the other side, and it just didn't make sense. I mean, I think we all realize there have been, I think, 2 deaths at Lenore in the last 25 or 30 years. There's been 2 deaths in that intersection
Last 10 years.
in the last 10 years. So, that's,
3.
but you can't fix that without having some other way to get people in and out. And so that we need that other location to get people in and out before you can even fix that. Because I don't want to push the traffic down another residential street. We have to do something that makes sense, and this could be a low-volume exit street. Again, and if we keep it in our jurisdictions as ownership, whether it's us because it's in ours, then we get to do some of the 10-foot lane designs, the
Wait a minute,
sidewalk.
we don't want to own it. We want somebody else to own it. We just want to design it.
See, Port Royal has taken a little bit of a different attitude on that. We own a lot of our roads.
I know.
And that allows us to do some of the things that we're doing, and hopefully over the next couple of years, you'll see some real changes on them as well. Anything else on traffic issues?
And that's just what I threw up there was just one of the designs the tool came up to address some of the issues at Lenore and Drayton, and they obviously conceptualized where that new road would interface with the rail corridor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So beyond fatalities, we do have a significant number of accidents because of people trying to make the left-hand movement off of Lenore and Drayton onto Rebo.
And the Thursday, Friday morning U-turns
Yeah.
that we get. So so Paris Island backs up towards Food Lion. Paris Island backs up that way. And the cars have learned that it doesn't back up coming off of Rebo Road. So they come across the bridge, they U-turn at Lenora to get on the ramp and get on. So our police monitor that very frequently because there's the accident with just the guy swinging around doing the U-turn. We don't know about each other's kind of crazy traffic patterns that happen. And if you were to, say, be at Food Line at 4:45, 5:15 in the afternoon and turn Waze on to get to Ladies Island, it will send you a left turn down Lenora, right on West Vine, left on Battery Creek, right on Waddell Road, back up over the bridge to beat the traffic right turn. And is that fair to those neighbors? That's one of the things, but, I live on that section. I see the increase in traffic when it happens. I can tell when Reebok Road is backed up bad because the cars are swinging by my house. And we've all seen, and I think you got stuck one time, it was backed up on Waddell Road.
Yes.
It was halfway down Waddell Road because Waze will send you down because it does that crowdsourcing and looks at people's speed in that way. What?
Yeah, yeah.
All the way down to Tolbert.
Yep, it was backed up all the way down to Talbot. Now, there is that's interesting that I have to say that. There is ways to tell Waze that street is not supposed to be done that way. That has to come through the municipality. I've been investigating that, how we can take those streets off the shortcuts list in that way. And I've been trying to work on figuring out how to do that. It's supposedly possible. Getting the full understanding of how to do it is a little bit harder, but that's something I'm looking at.
A lot of it comes to improving the intersection at the foot of the bridge and not restricting that right turn as much as it's restricted today.
Right.
I know we had a lengthy conversation about that intersection as a part of the Ladies Island transportation improvements, and I know that particular project was not a part of the 2018 sales tax referendum. I also understand we've got $30 million in the bank, but the latest estimates for the 9 projects are $71 million and some change. So I say all that to ask, kind of where are you with that one intersection? Is it going to be a part of the whole redevelopment of Rebo Road, or is that something you think you need to prioritize now with the partners? What's the thought process?
This is a little selfish, but I'm okay with saying it out loud. This needs to be fixed regionally, and the county needs to step up and fix this financially and come forward. We got a design, we've done the design, we need to get vet with them and do it. If we come up with money now that we can do some intersection improvements, we have some safety pedestrian concerns, and we've got some economic drivers that bring us more. Fixing this intersection just makes it easier for people to get on and off Ladies Island. Fixing some of our other intersections and spending some money in some other areas may bring us, the town, more revenue ultimately, and then we can focus back if we have to. I know that sounds a little, but it's the reality. They didn't fund it when everybody knew the intersection was going to be a D immediately when you fix stuff on the islands, and now it's an F. So it was short-sighted because they wanted to spend the money on Ladies Island. They didn't spend it. Construction costs are up 40% since the original estimates. If you're lucky, they're up 40%. So now they don't have enough money to fix that, and they never even considered fixing this. You know, it's where do you start fixing things? I don't want to just move problems. That would not be an economic driver for us, and we need an economic driver. If we have some capital to spend, besides our safety issues, I think all of council is, we need an economic driver. We need something that's going to bring a business to want to put a business in this corridor, and then every business that comes gives us more economics that we can reinvest into the community and hopefully participate in that. I hope that explains where my thought is. Never voted on this, but I think we've talked it.
Yeah, we've experimented with kind of a dedicated movement here by coning and trying it out, but it's the size of the 18-wheelers.
Can't make the
It
turn.
can't be accommodated.
Right.
That's the problem.
And it's become a beat the red. They're coming off of, I come out of Waddell pretty often, and you sit on that side and my light turns green and there are 4 or 5 more cars still going to make that left off of that bridge after the light is green. I don't move until both of those lanes stop on the other side of the road if I'm first, because they just keep coming. I mean,
It happened to me about 2 weeks ago, and one of your officers was in the opposing lane, and the car cut me off, and he kicked his lights on and
good for him.
and pulled the car. So I was appreciative of the quick service.
Good for him. I come from an area, I grew up in an area where beat the red was a pretty common thing in New York City, but I finally had to drop down on that. But it's amazing that it's happening right here. And it is something that goes on in that way.
I go through that intersection several times a day. Waddell, same thing backed up where car turning holds up the whole thing from Waddell. Ladies Island Drive, that's a problem. If you're in the right-hand lane coming off the bridge, almost every time, if you're going straight to Waddell, every time a car is going to come right by, you squeeze up on the sidewalk and come around and make that turn. And you're just scared to death they're going to hit you. I mean, there's that much room between you and the other car. I mean, it's very
A lot of
bad.
people take that road before you get to the gas station.
Yeah, they'll go through the gas
Professional
station.
drive.
Yeah.
Again, they're using it as a cut through.
That's why we don't fill the pothole.
There are other ways.
It is a calming device.
There are other ways to calm traffic.
It's an inverted speed bump.
Well, they
Speed
go
hole.
through the gas station.
Instead of a speed
I think everybody around this room has seen the video that I put out over a week ago, and we've asked our police chief, and I assume that you guys are similar in that way, to tighten up. There is, you know, the grace isn't going to be as big as it used to be when you're coming through our town. You know, I used the phrase in there, ticket for 2, think about it. But I specifically said on residential streets. I mean, I understand what I'm saying. But I'm one that does believe that that sign says speed limit, not approximate speed. There are people who won't drive with me if I drive because of that, and that's okay with me too. But I'll get you there safe every single time. Yeah. I'll get you there safe every single time. I know how long it really takes to get to Columbia. I know a lot of people say how quickly they get there, but I know how long it really takes to get to Columbia, and I leave on time every time to do that.
Well, I won't be following you.
So,
Just be honest.
American Rescue Plan. You guys are doing something totally different, I think, than we are. Right, are you putting a citizen's?
We're buying scratch-offs with our $6 million.
Okay, see how it goes?
Yeah.
Next time it gets over 500-600 million lottery, you're just gonna
Dump it in Powerball.
dump it in
We
Powerball?
spend
You're
millions
leveraging
and
your
win
funds.
thousands.
They spend millions and win thousands.
Just remember, you're supporting education.
We are, we are.
We're leveraging our funds, I think they say.
That's right, you're leveraging.
Figure if the feds are leveraging my grandchildren's future, we ought to, try to make the best of it.
I-
No, the proposal, staff's made 2 proposals. We did a public survey, got some really great feedback. We solicited other sort of nonprofit partners' proposals until the end of last year. We met, last Tuesday. Staff made a really great presentation. We're going to use the bulk of ours for stormwater. We've probably got 20, 30, pick a number, 20 million, 30 million, $40 million worth of stormwater liabilities. We just put $8+ million in Mossy Oaks. We appreciate the contribution that y'all made and the assistance. Certainly appreciate the county's assistance, but ultimately the bulk of that project, over $6 million, was on the backs of city taxpayers. Our bond capacity is $8 million. We borrowed $6 million, so we borrowed 75% of our bond capacity to fix one stormwater project. Now, we've shifted the debt around and we've freed up our bond capacity, but the long and short of it is we don't have the cash and we don't have the borrowing capacity to take care of these problems without state and federal assistance. So I think the $4 million is at least being kept in the bank for matches as we can go find and beg and borrow and steal other money. We're going to use about $1 million of it for affordable housing initiatives, and whether that's impact fee credits, participating with the Housing Trust, or some other creative areas yet to be determined. We're looking at a home repair program in some of our historically challenged neighborhoods. About $100,000. A small business grant program of $50-something thousand that we, again, yet to be determined on what the structure. We're hoping the chamber will help us with some structure on that. We're going to give some money to USCB because they're trying to make Performing Arts Center investments. TCL is trying to improve their allied health services, which we're certainly supportive of, given medical needs in this community. So we're going to give them some money. There's a nursing scholarship program that I think we're considering some funding. On the workforce development side, the Buford Digital Corridor has got a minority cybersecurity, cyber defense training program, in addition to some other programming they're sort of standing up on the development side. What am I missing, gentlemen?
Additionally, the monies are being allocated that we're grateful to be receiving under the Good Neighbor program for the county.
Oh, Joe's got the list.
Yeah, it's right here. But
and we are appreciative to the county for the Good Neighbor Fund.
Absolutely.
We're going to put that to good use.
But just so that
new body cameras for our
For the police?
officers.
Oh, very good.
Both body cameras and car cameras to upgrade that system to make it more efficient for our folks.
City cameras.
City
cameras, citywide cameras.
City cameras, and then like you guys, we're going to do the $1,500 per employee citywide, with the exception of the electeds.
Right.
They're getting the next election anyway.
So just so that people hearing,
Is that what y'all are doing, or is that one proposal?
That's what we worked in work session. We haven't voted on.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's what's on the table.
You know when you put Jell-O in the fridge for like 3 hours and it just gets
It's
that
just-
layer?
I got you. It's
It's
just
about,
there.
it's firm like that.
right. But just so that people understand, the people that are happen to be listening, watching, and the people that came to the room, the magnitude of what you've received, what we received, I think again is important. So I'll let both the town managers. What was our portions and their portions?
And we got 5.4 because you can only get 70. We were allocated 6.6, but you can only get 75% of your fiscal 19 budget. That's you capped out. And since our budget's only 7 and some change, we ended up with about 5.4 million total.
We got the 6.6.
We got the 6.6.
You got the full
but
6.6.
Our budget's higher than your budget.
Right.
So we got all.
Just so that people listening understand, we are absolutely, we're talking about it. We've got it on our workshop. I said workshop retreat. We've got it on our retreat to really spend some time on that, and we're looking at stormwater as well, is one of our big things that we're looking at and how we can do that. Say again? Roads, which is difficult to use this money for, as we all know. It's amazing somehow the state and other areas are using, but we're not allowed. But it's difficult to use the money for roads. It's not unallowable, but if you're replacing the stormwater line under that road, then you can pave the road. So, there's that aspect.
It's amazing how much stormwater you're going to need to replace.
Amazing how much stormwater. The town has for many years, and we have 3 council members that have been on for a long time here, getting sewer to some areas in the town has been an issue, and that is one eligible, and we are going to work with the Water Authority a little bit on that. We also looking at utilizing some of that for sewer on the Reebok Road corridor, again, to make those properties sewer ready, again, for the economic driver aspect of that people are ready to come in that aspect. We've talked about, is there some way we could do it for capacity relief, where we have business wants to come in, develop one of those pieces of property or redevelop it, that we could participate in some sort of a capacity relief fund or impact fund, and again, as a way to get some drivers up. So we're going to have a lot of conversation about that. We moved our retreat up. We're doing it next month, so that we can get that done pretty early and get some things moving in that aspect.
We sort of asked, staff to look through 4 lenses. One was obviously, allowable uses. So you got to stay within the bounds of the federal guidelines. Second was, where are areas where we struggle to find funds. It's one-time money, so let's not invest in things that are going to be recurring revenues. It's kind of one and done. And then where areas we struggle to find funds or greatest impact aligned with our capital improvement and our other strategic plan. And so those were the 4 lenses that we looked through when trying to determine our priorities.
Council, anything more?
And the only other piece of it is, remember, using that revenue replacement formula, about 890,000 of that could go back to the general fund, which basically then is unfettered.
Free, right.
And we had talked about a significant upgrade to the sidewalk network because
Right,
of
so that was one of the big things. Use that as the budget replacement and move that. We've got Brooks working very hard. We're working with an engineer. We're looking at master planning our sidewalks in this downtown area and adding sidewalks and utilizing that money to do that aspect of it. Thank you, Ben, for reminding me of that one. Carol, Kevin, anything else?
No.
Affordable housing, you kind of touched on it a minute ago. It's the next one on the list.
It's been a priority of ours. It's listed on our strategic plan. Phil headed up our affordable housing task force, which came out with a really great list of recommendations, and so we're working through prioritizing those and executing. As you know, we've been participating with the county and the Affordable Housing Coalition on the trust fund idea. We participated like you guys did with the consultant. I've been pretty clear about some of my personal concerns about the question marks around the governance and structure of the Affordable Housing Trust. I also have a question mark about a bridge fund of, short, low interest, impatient capital. I personally think there's more access to capital in the affordable and workforce housing space now than there's ever been, whether it's banks, nonprofits, CDFIs. The list is pretty long. The challenge is land prices and construction cost. And Mike can attest, he did some workforce housing himself with a partner, and by the time he got done trying to shave it as tight as he could, it wasn't workforce.
It was workforce, but it became so market workforce that it was hardly affordable to anybody who has a real job.
Right.
So we've come to terms that there's going to have to be some public subsidies in that space if we want to be serious about expanding inventory.
Water and sewer capacities are a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're a huge chunk of that.
Huge chunk
cost.
of the workforce.
And the impact fees, and that's why I think we're trying to identify some of our ARPA money to be able to offset some of those impact fee credits, which seem to be pretty significant for developers. We want to participate in a regional way. The Economic Development Corporation is a great example of when we all work together and we all throw resources in and don't get too concerned about the lines, that it lifts all ships. But I think we also want to be responsible with public funds, and it's easy to jump into these things. It's hard to sort of get out of them and make sure that they're successful.
And I agree with the regional statement, but until you have a good public transportation network, I'm not so sure the region extends over the Broad River. And is it 2 separate regions? Because we really, you did work, people who need the workforce housing are also not going to drive all the way to Bluffton for jobs, because there may be other reasons. But if you had regional transportation, then it makes sense wherever the workforce housing, and you bring in the regional transportation to help people move around. So I keep running this through my head. Is it 2 models? Is there a difference? Is there something different between North and South? And South really extends all the way to Jasper County. North doesn't. Extend to Jasper County, and is the model the same on both sides? Steve, you and I have had this conversation.
Yeah, well, for me, I think there is a great value in having somebody or some bodies
Single person.
who wake up every day, like a John O'Toole, and think solely about affordable and workforce housing, and is out there, building coalitions, understands the resources, and can help bring people together and put deals together. And so I think there's absolute value in that.
Yep.
And we, and I don't know if there's enough deal flow for Port Royal and Beaufort and somehow carve out just northern Beaufort County for us to justify those resources. So I'd argue from a regional standpoint, of us all working together to have those persons or person makes some sense. I also think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us with Beaufort Housing Authority.
I agree.
And the repositioning that they're doing with their current inventory. Frankly, in northern Beaufort County, we probably stand to benefit the fastest, because most of their inventory is in northern Beaufort County. But working with the Lowcountry Housing Redevelopment Corporation, their companion nonprofit, if we could restructure them, provide some resources there. You and I have talked about this.
Yes.
It seemed to be dead on arrival with the Southern Beaufort County mayors. So whether or not we work with them on the trust issue, I think we have to work with Beaufort Housing Authority and Lowcountry Housing Redevelopment Corporation to redevelop our existing, do 60% AMI and less housing stock.
Right, right.
And that is a whole number of benefits.
And when you say the Beaufort Housing Authority, but it's understand, they have assets in both the town of Port Royal, the city of Beaufort, and the county.
And town of Port Royal and Bluffton.
Right. In northern, and then in southern, they have Bluffton and Hilton Head.
Yes.
Right, they have Bluffton and Hilton Head. So there's already somebody in place, and that's what Stephen is talking about. And how do we create something new? Do we
Well,
expand on what's there?
I went to Soloco this week, where it was a agenda item. And some of us had the opportunity to meet Tammy Hoyt Hawkins from Community Works out of Greenville. The Coastal Community Foundation of the Low Country has given her organization $500,000 to come down here and try to figure out what's next. You probably saw the Beaufort Memorial Hospital rolled out a home ownership assistance program for their employees, which I think is rock star awesome. And that's going to be managed through Community Works. I think Eric Greenway, the county administrator, is on to something. He's asked Tammy to provide a proposal on Community Works, at least initially being the persons and the
CDFI.
kind of the back end of, because they have their CDFI, they've got $8 or $9 million in capital right now they're trying to give away. They've got a whole host of community development products and resources. So I think that's probably a good start. But I've also said I'm nervous about us abdicating all responsibility for workforce and affordable housing to an agency that's in Greenville.
Right.
And I will equate it to our experience with the digital corridor. We started that. Charleston was supposed to manage. They managed from afar for about a year. And while they meant really well, stuff happened in Charleston. They got sort of busy, and we didn't feel like we were really getting the attention we needed. So now we have a local governance board with the digital corridor. Charleston's still a partner. They still are advisors. They pick up the phone when we call, but it's governed locally, and staff is governed locally. And so I think if we could figure out some kind of hybrid model where we take advantage of Community Works resources, but we do have a local advisory governance board that's control of our own staff and our own sort of jurisdictions, personally, I think that's the best model. I understand the county right now is working on getting a proposal from Community Works, working on a draft resolution for all of us to consider on how we would cooperate regionally. And I also think the fees that were proposed in the consultant study, that's 3% of ARPA monies, is an arbitrary number. And it either needs to be more equitable among the jurisdictions or some flat fee like we did with the Economic Development Corp. And so I think the county has agreed to recalculate the fees.
Good.
Not sure how they're going to do that, but I'm expecting a resolution and recalculated fees sometime in the near future.
Anything else, anybody?
No.
Well, the last item on the list
I was going to ask real quick.
Go.
Y'all that have sat in those meetings, how committed is the county, you think, to the housing trust issue?
Very,
That's
Very committed. Since I've been on council, we started with one or two people wanting to stay to work affordable housing, and now all the council, except maybe two, are very supportive of this idea of housing hospital. We invested a lot of money in it already. Before we could do anything 8 years ago, some of the council members insisted that we didn't have a problem until we did a survey. And so, yes, very committed.
Okay.
We've had turnover, county council too.
okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, thanks to the county's leadership, I don't think it would have gotten nearly as far if it wasn't for the county's leadership, and especially Eric Greenway's.
Yes.
So again, I don't want to seem like the wet army blanket on the trust, right? Because I love the idea of cooperating regionally. I just think there some questions have to be sort of answered before we start throwing millions of dollars of public money into a whole new bureaucracy.
Well, the last item on my list, or the list that's in front of us all, was the fire station on Rebolt Road and what the status is, what's happening, and how did we get where we are, where we go.
We bought
Robert
it.
Smalls.
You bought it. Robert Smalls.
Robert Smalls.
Yeah, I said Robert Small.
He's a Rebo.
Did I say Rebolt?
He's
I
a Rebo.
apologize. Both ours. Thank you.
We heard Robert Smalls.
So, what?
We heard.
You heard Robert Smalls.
Initially the deal was we had a long-term lease on the property. It allowed us to sort of get into it fast. It was turnkey. Given the conditions at the time, it made a lot of sense for us. But the owner, I think, approached us and made us an offer we couldn't refuse, so to speak. And so purchase price, and with historically low interest rates, we had the borrowing capacity. And so right at the end of the year, we've closed. And so we acquired it, thought it was in the best interest of the city. I think there was some dialogue with staff about the deal. So I know we've sort of blurred the lines between capital and labor over the years. I'm personally think it's working really great, and the more we can, keep the fire service working together, I think the citizens benefit. And again, how we continue to blur the lines between capital equipment and labor is fine with me, if it's fine with everybody else.
First of all, start the statement with, we have the model of what the fire department should be. I'll state that every time. The rest should be looking at what we did with the city of Beaufort and the town of Port Royal and that model. There's no question, and if we can ever get EMS involved with that model, it would even be another one to talk about. So that's really not the concern. It was a little bit of a surprise to find out that you were buying the station that's in our town limits. That's just the reality of it. I'm not saying that we could have afforded to, but I would have liked the opportunity to say this is a deal that you guys want to own the Capitol because it's in our town limits. And so
We'll sell it to you.
the deal, I'm sure you will.
You can have it for what we paid for it.
That's one of those things. If it comes something like that ever comes up again, please.
I did not realize that. I didn't realize that was not communicated, and so from a political standpoint, I apologize for the oversight.
The deal is happening, is what we found out.
Okay.
And we would have, I'm not sure that we could have. Maybe we split it, and maybe we did some things. I would have loved the opportunity politically to discuss that one. That's all. I mean, I just think it's important. We talk about a lot of things, but like you said, you made an offer you couldn't refuse. You had a great finance director to realize what it was going to do. I understand the reasons and what you did and why. Just a little bit of...
Again, I apologize. I didn't understand that, and I should have called you.
It's okay.
We had some discussions, but obviously the concerns we had is, obviously we all love each other right now, but
Love
if
each other.
20 years from now, we're all gone and something does happen, what's our equity stake in that building?
This is why I argue that right now, while we're all getting along and we know that it is what's in the best...
Mary Beth will be here. She'll take care of her. Mary Beth and Mike. Mary Beth and Mike will still be hanging on.
I will say that...
With our walkers, exactly.
Look, if it falls apart, it will be because of egos and attitudes.
Correct.
Not because it's in the best interest of our citizens.
It is in the best interest of the citizens.
And I think right now, while it's working well, it's working efficiently, we all love each other, the more we can tie ourselves together, I think helps prevent future politicians from trying to unscramble that omelet.
Agreed.
And to take it a step further, I think we need to engage the county about how we could, again, continue to figure out how more efficient service delivery. Because the fact that we can offer ISO 1 service to our citizens in our two jurisdictions for the price that what we can offer, is amazing. Less than 2% of fire departments across the country can offer ISO 1 rated service. And that's something we all ought to be very proud of for the value that we deliver.
It's a very big deal for commercial.
Absolutely. I have been on the Northern Regional Plan since before it was adopted as part of the Northern Regional Plan. And then I've been on the implementation side, and I can't tell you how many times that regional service of fire came up, even with that plan, and it just can't get it off of dead center. It just doesn't go anywhere. And you're right, it's something that needs to keep happening. Maybe things have changed enough that the conversation can
There are models around the state that could be followed.
Yep.
I'll also say that our department is racing towards ambulatory care with training and some of the planning within the department, and that's something that I'm not going to speak for my guys, but I've been candid with our staff about that. I think that's something that we all need to talk about in the impacts of what that means to citizens are already paying for county EMS. And if we start offering it ambulatory care within our own department, that bugs me a little bit. And so that conversation needs to be put on the table with all of us, county included, at some point in the near future. My personal opinion.
I agree.
Kevin?
I was just gonna, what can we do to intertwine ourselves so tight as when it comes to fire that it can't be undone, or does that just happen naturally with time?
We're going to buy headquarters.
Right. And then
Well, are there actual things we can do, or is it just with time?
Well,
and
the old days, my understanding, and you guys, the old timers know this more than I do.
But did he just say that? He just said old time.
Well, I don't have Billy to pick on anymore,
We were discussing.
We call it institutional knowledge. That's the way.
My understanding, the capital was kept separate. So you guys owned your own stations, you owned your own trucks, we owned our own stations, our own trucks, and Reese, Kim, you guys stop me if I get way off base. I have 3 glasses of sweet tea.
Yeah.
But then the labor, the city basically hires all the employees, and then you guys we have a pro rata sort of share that you contribute, and everything was copacetic. But then with
the latest update of the MOU, everything except for the actual real estate was tied together in the MOU so that it's owned and operated by the city of Beaufort with the opportunity to participate in the real estate at the time, like we did with the lease. There is an agreement that's been fleshed out between the management to provide ownership stake in the fire station on Robert Smalls Parkway to the town, which I do think will more than adequately take care of the town in any future, and they will have an ownership stake as soon as we ratify that agreement. So it'll be coming forward once we finalize it with staff for both councils to consider, and I think any concerns on that front will be allayed, and it'll be unlikely we find ourselves in that similar situation in the future again, where the timing was right and things had to happen.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I think it got dumped on their plate. This guy had a year-end kind of tax issue that he had to address, so yeah, time was of the essence.
No, I got it, I understand it, I just wanted to make sure we talked about it
Yeah, yeah.
and brought it out. Nobody's looking to separate this agreement, everybody's looking to say and expand
Great
on
job.
it and tout it everywhere in the county and beyond to the state levels, because it is a model that I think more should be looking at. And I hope it's a model that the public service districts take a look at and say, is it time? Is it time that public service districts join up and do some things? And how do we make that
I
happen?
just want to add the one thing, which is the financial numbers. At an interest rate that we figured over 2%, and we ended up at 1.5%. We were saving over $3 million by acquiring it versus what the lease would have been over the same period of time.
That's
So
awesome.
we have benefited over the 30
Right,
years,
right.
and in fact, we calculated at 30 years. In the end, we didn't realize this till the other day. The financing ended up at 15 years. So we're gaining an extra 15 years with it at the same time, so.
Yeah, and all this contemplation of sharing ownership and continued agreement underneath the MOU, how we pay for that, this particular deal didn't change that at all. So it's really at a net cost to nobody to change to the ownership model of the station.
Yep.
Well, I tell you, I was on council when we first originally did that. And one of the things that we sold to the citizens at that time, which was wonderful, is that our ISO rating was so high in the town of Port Royal. And by joining, we get to use your volunteers, you get to use our volunteers, we get to use each other's equipment, which helped us bring that ISO rating down. And back then, it was a big deal.
Well, it
So
was.
I think it's been a great thing for us to be in bed together with that one, is what I'd call it, because.
Through that lens, you're not talking about 2-to-1, you're talking about a 5 or a 6 to a 1.
Right.
Exactly.
It was a significant change over about 15 years.
It
It
wa-
was. It was.
And so-
Over 20 years now?
Us more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Late
Yeah,
90s.
because when I was town manager, we were public safety, and we
Yeah.
were about 5 or 7, 6 or
Yeah.
7, I don't know, we were.
It was the
Yeah.
late 90s when it all
Yeah, but we
came
had, that was
together.
back when we had a public
Pulling
safety
fire trucks
department.
with horses.
And we went from public
When
safety
Phil
to
was-
police and fire.
We tried.
Is your microphone on?
Back then, the town and the city didn't get along, and Wendell Wilburn was, somebody chased it away, I guess.
No, it's a great, like I said, it's a great model. It's a great.
But seriously, we'll sell it to you if you want to buy it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I think we're working just fine together.
No, it's fine.
All right,
The
so
MOU is gonna come down.
Miscellaneous.
we're at the miscellaneous. Anything anybody would let, any council member, staff, anything anybody wants to talk about that we haven't talked about?
When's the next meeting?
It's a good thing to talk about,
Yeah.
because we need to keep this going.
Get them back to once a quarter?
We original thought was a quarter. Let's staff propose something to each other, and let's get it on our calendars.
And you will have pecan pie, right?
Yeah.
This,
Plus
y'all-
y'all-
You're hosting, so it's up to you.
Ball's in your court.
I blew it. I blew it, so
He was
it's
bringing
up
the pie.
to you.
Given
Yeah,
who's
you didn't
here
blow those
tonight,
lemon squares were.
The lemon squares. I love lemon squares. I mean, that's good.
given who's here tonight, this particular Thursday appears to work real well. Everybody's got heavy nonprofit and other responsibilities on their nights. Is that true, this
Well,
given night?
Thursday night, the
Depends.
fourth one of the month is LCOG, so like I had to miss LCOG.
I did too.
And
Okay.
Phil did too. And we only meet once a month, so, and that kind of messes up maybe third or second,
Well,
something maybe.
the city does not meet on the first Tuesday usually. We're the second Tuesday.
Paul, probably have to be May, first week in May.
That's fine. We can do a Tuesday, Wednesday night meetings for us. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, we're fine with that.
If you got a Zoom, you got a Zoom.
Right, if there's multiple ways to do it, we have to do it. Yeah, so let the staff discuss it, send out the invites. Because this side knows I'm a big calendar invite person, so put it on the calendar invite.
I
Gotta
think
get
this
on
is,
my calendar.
this is probably the first one we've had here, because we usually have done it at the Kaiser Cancer Center.
Yeah, it
So
is. We had one other one here.
Just one, maybe
yeah,
out of all the years.
I remember one of them.
One of the first ones.
Yeah.
Mhm, one of the first ones.
All right?
We'll host the next one, obviously.
Yes.
We'll bring pecan pie.
Any other
Pecan pie?
any other miscellaneous?
I'll bring the whipped cream.
Miscellaneous, any other items?
Miscellaneous items. Nothing? Ian?
Anyone?
Chamber? Anything?
Anybody want to introduce any staff that's outside of the council that's here tonight?
We have a new finance director.
Yeah.
May I
Okay.
introduce
Come forward.
Alan Eisman. He's been sort of second in command in the finance department for a few years now, I guess. And so Kathy is retiring next month, well-deserved retirement. And so Alan,
She's still on speed dial though.
So not new to the city, but new to the role.
Yeah, it is really, I've been with the city for 6 years now.
Welcome to the
I
board.
thought that was great. I was really excited when I saw that Alan and I were in the same Leadership Buford class.
Oh,
Great
that
guy.
Leadership Buford
Great
class.
guy. I mean, you really bond there. But Rick, when I saw that announcement, I was just so happy for him and for y'all. I thought that was
Once
great.
again, Leadership Buford is.
well, he and his wife are very active in the community, JCs and Leadership Buford, and a host of other things. So we're really excited about being able to hire from within.
Yeah,
and
that's
what
great.
he's going to bring to the department.
Let's growth in
Joe, what
within.
class are you?
Shows you moving people up.
Well, you're going to get some history on that answer.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Brooke has taken on a new, different role with the town as well. So, Director of Administrative Services, she basically has to smack me around. And,
Tough job.
And does a great job.
yep, absolutely.
Somebody has to.
Well deserved.
Somebody has to.
Thank you.
It's awesome. All right. Nothing else? We're adjourned.